Good evening and welcome to The Square. Tonight is a very important discussion where we're going to focus on Viewers Edition 25. This is the 25th series of the Viewers Edition, and we're going to talk about a couple of things, the resident panelists. And the first topic that we're going to kick off with, amongst others, we're going to look at the new COVID-19 travel bans. We're also going to look at the new local leadership in Rwanda, and we're also going to look at the entertainment sector in Rwanda as we enter the festive season. My name is MPYISI, host of The Square. As always, I'm joined on a Viewers Edition. I'm very happy to always have this sort of show with the Squares and panelists. So I'll start by introducing Charles HABA. Great to have you on the show.
Same here, Dana. How are you?
Good.
Good.
Also, resident panelist on the show, NAMATA. Great to have you. We missed you last week.
Missed you too. Thank you, Dan.
Great. I would like us to kick off with a tweet just before we start the show. And the first tweet that we have on our screen, if you could have this on our screens, is from Fred Kagame, looking at Viewers Edition 25 and the topics we have lined up. And he says that on entertainment, coffee was ashamed to be accepted here, and above all in the period of the 16 days of fighting gender-based violence. Imagine if, I thank the Kenya government that crossed out his performance. Imagine if it was again teenage girls that welcomed him at the Kigali airport. This pained me the most. His sentiments echo a lot of activists who you know, you were calling for the cancellation of this concert. We have another tweet coming in, and if you could also have that on our screens. And this tweet is from Prince, and Prince says, on COVID-19 travel bans, I can only reference you to a comment that was made by one of the most influential entrepreneurs in Africa. His name is Vusi Tembekwayo. I believe he's South African, who recently, when he was in Kigali, and I share the same feeling. If you click on this video, if you're on our social media, he does reference a lot of the travel bans. I'd like our people watching, especially on social media, to keep the tweets coming using hashtag #TheSquareRW, as well as all the social media platforms that we'll read out later on in the show. My first question is to do with the COVID-19 travel bans. And the latest COVID variant, known as Omicron, has no doubt heightened the pandemic. And in this regard, there have been travel bans as a result of this. However, you know, nearly 2 weeks after South Africa raised the flag on this new variant, it was slapped with a couple of blacklisting, in terms of red listing, so to speak, in terms of countries that blocked people coming from South Africa. And African leaders have said that this is extremely unfair. It's a sort of knee-jerk response, especially in the sense that it has been detected in other countries in Europe and across Europe, but similar travel bans are not imposed on these countries, but more on Southern African countries. Some have even called these travel bans travel apartheid. And I would like to hear from the Square resident panelists these new travel bans. It's not a new thing, it's been happening for a while, but in light of the latest variant being put out there, what are your thoughts on this and what can have been done better? And Brenna, I'll kick off with you.
Well, as what we have learned from the pandemic is so much is outside your control, so you can only do so much. But we know that they don't work. You only create an elusive sense of safety. They just don't work. They're not sustainable, and most of the time, as we've seen with this new variant, it's already spreading. The Belgian case had no links to South Africa, so they just don't work. But you can understand why some countries may put them in place, perhaps as they try to have a plan in place. Yeah, but we only know so far what works with the pandemic is vaccination. A successful vaccination campaign, again, is not sufficient. I mean, if you look at Rwanda, it's doing very well, 30%, but in the neighborhood, it doesn't matter really. Yes, you're saving lives inside Rwanda, but Rwanda cannot survive on its own, you know. So, but the conversation, I think, has to really focus on what works, which is vaccination, and to mitigate the risk. I think what we need to really see, and again, I'm glad that we are seeing booster shots for the high-risk groups. and I think it should expand beyond just the elderly, but also to people with, you know, underlying conditions. If you've had, for instance, a transplant, or you know, and kind of go slow with the children, you know. Let the children have the one dose and not really, you know, because the vulnerable groups need the vaccines more. So we should accelerate the booster shots, rolling them out. And it's a problem right now because we've had in some quarters, as the government introduces vaccine mandates, even for children, you have places that are insisting on fully vaccinated, you know, and we are not there yet. So some of these things are also being implemented without a real understanding of the reality on the ground. Because if you're asking someone to present a COVID certificate, yet they can't access it on the RBC website, what are they supposed to do, you know? Or if their dose, their second dose has not yet, the date for the second dose has not yet been scheduled, you know, and you're insisting that they must be fully vaccinated, you know. So there's still a bit of work that needs to be done. So overall, I feel that we need to focus on what works, and also pay attention to the recovery of the economy, you know. Restrictions will undermine whatever effort has already gone into recovery. And we see that one, whether it's supply of the essentials that we need, even medical supplies, it's still air travel, for instance, you know, you need that, but also for trade. Yeah. So once you have travel bans, then it's not just a restriction of movement of people, but also goods and services, you know. Yeah, so you don't want to do that, but again, you can understand why some countries will do that, because they want to, one, have a plan in place, but clearly travel bans simply delay the bigger problem. So let's focus on accelerating vaccination, especially among the vulnerable groups. Try to focus again on exit, you know, controlling the screening, strengthen the testing before and after, and really try to see how we have continuity. The pandemic is not going to go away, so we have to find a way of forging ahead even with the risk. Yeah.
One of the things that you say that caught my attention is this whole requirement of vaccination, COVID-19 double dose vaccination, fully vaccinated. It's not clear, especially in the hospitality industry. I know of a conference that was supposed, well, a small meeting that was supposed to take place, and basically these people were told that they need to be fully vaccinated. Now, I don't know if this requirement is it across all gatherings that people have to be fully vaccinated, or is it presenting a negative COVID test, especially people who travel out of Rwanda? Some people come from countries where getting these vaccinations is next to impossible. You know, we are lucky that we are 30%. So when you're having sort of these conferences with non-Rwandan people coming in, and hotels are saying we can't have this meeting because you're not double dosed in terms of vaccinations, you know, there's some clarity that's not there. And I feel that it's more or less, this needs to be clear, and this requirement needs to be really put across so people can benefit from it, as opposed to, you know, having some of these meetings cancelled. So yeah, just to add to what you're saying. Charles, over to you on these travel bans and the pandemic in general, where we stand.
I think the pandemic in general has had severe consequences. In Rwanda alone, at the beginning of the pandemic, it took away a minister. When we are at the tail end of fighting it, it has taken away the boss of the Rwanda Biomedical Council. So it's been very expensive. But that said, I want to make two comments about. So one is about the hefty price that we've paid. People have died. That's the most tragic. People have lost their jobs. But even from an economic perspective, we've had a zillion conversations on this forum, so I'll not dwell too much on it at the risk of boring our viewers. But I want to talk about the issue of vaccination certificates. I have a friend who owns an entertainment spot, and one of the conditions for them being allowed to reopen was a requirement to have a vaccination certificate.
Of people entering?
Yes, yes, dwellers.
All right.
Yes. Now that may not be too difficult, but considering, and I think the point Bana raises is that the beauty about vaccines is vaccines do not necessarily prevent you from catching any disease that you've been vaccinated against, but they give you a much better fighting chance. Novak Djokovic is the world's #1 tennis player. He may not participate in a tournament for his country in Australia in a few days to come, because one of the requirements of the Australian government is that all participating people, even people traveling into Australia, must be fully vaccinated. And himself and his team are arguing that it is my vaccination certificate is my personal information. You should not reveal it to the whole world. And, you know, in terms of appearance fees, and you're talking about one of the world's most celebrated sportsmen who is making such a very bold statement. What does it mean for the ordinary mwananchi whom you're forcing to be vaccinated? There's a video that went viral of an old man somewhere who...
With a silicone hand.
Yeah, who was literally being compelled to be vaccinated. So I think there's a bit of a silver lining thereon. It is extremely important that people are vaccinated, but we need to communicate the same message across the board. Now, in regards to the double standards that we are seeing on travel apartheid, as you called it, Diana, and I think that's where we have a bit of a concern. It's very easy for you to say that if Omicron had been announced or identified in a European laboratory, we would not have the travel ban that we have today. If you look at the Belgian cases that Bana was talking about, you ask yourself, why hasn't Belgium been put on the red list by the United Kingdom? How many Omicron cases have we had in Southern Africa in relation to the rest of the continent, or of the world for that matter? So we find ourselves, COVID has really deepened the divide between the rich and less advantaged countries, and you can really see it's a wake-up call to say no, we should be setting our own agenda. I understand that in the case of Rwanda, for example, that we were very quick to say, if you're coming from the Southern African countries, Zimbabwe, Botswana, and what have you, yes, we will restrict you to a quarantine X number of days. I am not very sure whether it is because of the announcement that came up that the virus was discovered in Southern Africa. I think it was more to do with the fact that our airlines go to other parts of the world, and we do not want to risk those other routes in terms of Rwanda being banned on those other routes, because we are ferrying in people from Southern Africa.
Just very quickly,
yes.
You're saying, because I wanted to know your thoughts on that, Rwanda is one of those countries that actually, you know, impose the same.
Yes. We're probably amongst the first to do it.
Exactly.
Yes,
what's your take on that?
And Africa was very disappointed.
Exactly. What's your take on that, Charles?
There was a huge business event of the Rwanda Zimbabwe business community that was scheduled to take place, and it was called off for that specific reason. I think the powers that be in the airline industry put their choices on a weighing scale and said, it's easier for us to say no to the Zimbabwean, Botswana, Mozambican, South African travelers in comparison to the Asian and European routes that Rwanda is plying. And do you ask me, was it a health or COVID decision? I don't think so. I think it was purely an economic decision.
Strategic decision.
Yes, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Berna, is there something you wanted to add?
I mean, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. Again, because if you look at Rwanda, Rwanda has done almost and followed every rule book, you know, in terms of COVID, safety, and over and above, yeah? But we're the first of the red list, you know? And so you wonder, maybe sometimes you just have to go on and get on with what you have to do.
Exactly.
You know?
Like Charles said, it's obvious, it's very unfair, it's borderline racist, what this pandemic is showing in terms of global, you know, the global partnerships when it comes to this pandemic. And I think, like both of you said, it's time for us to just focus on getting our own agenda ahead.
Well, it's difficult. It's easier said than done. It's easier said than done. I mean,
but
if we take, for instance,
can't keep on crying against these injustices because they keep on happening.
Let's take the South African case, travel ban, as an example. Currently, most countries in Africa depend on South Africa for testing.
Yes.
You know, for testing.
Yes.
Samples are taken to South Africa.
Yes.
You know, so if you're banning flights to South Africa, there are other, you know, beyond COVID, there are other problems that are created, you know. So it's tough. Yeah.
I think
it's tough.
It is tough. I also read somewhere that some of this new Omicron variant, even taking it from South African labs to European labs, just for further investigation and testing, is even a problem now because of these travel bans. So it's like spiting yourself, you know, just imposing these bans. It's really unfortunate, but you know, African leaders have condemned it, you know, including global organization leaders like WHO. But these countries will still do what they need to do. A knee-jerk response, it's not based on science, but it's been happening, and I think it's going to happen for quite a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything you'd like to add before we go to our next topic, Charles?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So the next topic, dear viewers, is to do with the new local leadership. Exciting times last month, where mayors and vice mayors were elected or re-elected across 27 districts in Rwanda, and this has been something that has been really anticipated because it was held off for over a year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And my question to you, Charles and Berna, is that you know, what do you think should be key priority areas for these new mayors, those who are re-elected and those who are elected, specifically with regards to the background of leadership quality, where there were mass resignations in the previous years, you know, these abrupt resignations citing personal reasons. We've had this sort of topic on the show a couple of times. Backgrounds, you know, following basically based on sackings, resignations, as well as allegations of graft, poor performance, and internal wrangles. What are your expectations of these new local leaders, Charles? And what do you think their priority areas should be?
I'll kick it off with what the president said to them when he went to their retreat in Gishari. And it was really around them making more time for the people that they lead and not ending up in endless meetings. Now, as in my day-to-day business, I find myself having to do quite a bit of communication and business and dealings with all local leaders, from the mayor of Kigali, governors, and all the way up to Mudugudu chiefs, literally across the entire country. One of my personal expectations is that if they can at least respond on time,
I know
even to something as simple as a text message. I know the most difficult thing for them to respond to is a letter, but if they can at least respond to a text message or a call or whatever of their people. Now, Bana and Diana, if we are to make an appraisal of enlightened people in this country, you guys would rank up there. Now, if your responses are not attended to on time, now imagine that local excuse my Spanish, peasant down there, right? So that is my number one expectation. But the other one is really a bit sort of very, very specific to COVID and COVID recovery. We've gone through a very rough time, and that has dragged a lot of government resources in terms of feeding people, in terms of providing for our own people medication, and people who don't have jobs and what have you. So our economy is on its knees. 73% of GDP. Our debt to GDP ratio is 73%. That means, in layman's terms, for every 100 francs that the economy, that the government makes, 73 francs goes into servicing our national debt. Now, it means we have to work so hard to make sure we make a lot of money internally. So the local leaders have to think around ensuring that we are making money, which does not mean, which you see it in Kigali quite a bit, that the most aggressive people are the guys the local leaders who are moving around collecting fines for COVID violations, stifling businesses because they are going to charge a street vendor 100,000 francs for wearing his mouth just above his upper lip.
His mask.
Mask, sorry. Right? So to ensure that as the economy grows, as we recover, it has to start from the very local level. The third one really is about decision and indecision. One of the biggest problems that we have with our leaders, because they pay a very hefty price, to your point, Diana, about mass resignations, they pay a very hefty price for a wrong decision. So historically, they decide to make no decision. So my third expectation is about decisive leaders.
And accountability. Yes. Yeah. Brenna, over to you.
It's mainly two things. One, taking the time to really look at the link between climate change and food insecurity. It's becoming a big problem. That one season you have, a village that is food secure, and then there's a drought or there's flooding, and you have people starving, and there are several issues, malnutrition. So for me, I think priority has to be how you build resilience at the grassroots level, Food security is so important, and so for local leaders, I think it has to be a priority. I mean, food is a basic need, so we shouldn't really have households that struggle to access food. But until they pay attention to climate change, that issue will remain there, and we'll have people that are really vulnerable because of that. Climate change is a bigger problem. It will get worse. So how do you help communities, build the resilience and the ability to adapt?
Absolutely.
The second aspect is the need to rethink social protection, as it has previously been done. Again, because of the pandemic, we have seen that our vulnerable population are not as strong as we probably thought they were. The ability to withstand shocks such as the pandemic. So you want really, if you're a mayor somewhere, to see how as you implement social protection programs, look at again the resilience. Are you helping the community? One, for instance, have savings that can protect them in face of a shock. Profile, the families, look at their needs and see how you really address the issue of resilience.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Rwanda had done very well with social protection, you know, with the 1 cow per family, with the cash transfers, with the jobs that come through the roads. But we saw during the pandemic, all those jobs were no longer there. So part of the priority for me, I feel the local leadership has to find a way of revisiting most of those social protection programs with a view of, one, building resilience, making sure that you have your vulnerable people can at least cope in face of major shocks, such as the pandemic that we've seen, but also climate change. For me, that is really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you say that because, you know, some of these mayors have inherited in certain provinces that are preparing for droughts because of, you know, just this climate change issues, lack of rainfall. So, yeah, that's absolutely on point. I want to hear your thoughts on this. For me, my expectations would be on leadership. You know, the previous leadership was characterized by internal wrangles, you know, people resigning because people are not cooperating, they're not working for the greater good, which is the Rwandan citizen, you know, and I really hope that this, especially those who are even re-elected, you know, you're there to serve, there's performance, the contracts, you're there to sign, you're accountable, but leadership, I think, because without it, you know, nothing can happen, and I'm really looking forward to, you know, sort of seamless cooperation and not working in silos. I think last time, Charles, you mentioned how sometimes, you know, these mayors don't even understand how they can work with each other. You know, you have malnutrition in one district and then there's milk going bad in another district. You know, how can they start working together and stop working in silos and cooperate and talk to each other? Yeah, I don't know if, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to forget this. I wanted to raise the issue of, so there's this campaign going around smartphones, smartphones.
The Connect Rwanda?
Connect Rwanda.
Yes.
You know, it's sometimes I wonder how people implement some of these programs. Because I was up country and I managed to meet several Baturaje who had benefited from this scheme. And so someone has this beautiful marathon, has a beautiful marathon, which is in English. And they don't know what to do with it except to receive a phone call. Yeah? And you wonder, is it just a matter of saying we have distributed 1 million phones, or it is actually making sure that if you give someone a phone, you want them to actually use it? So if you've given them a phone, the programming is in English. This person can barely write or barely know what is on that phone. What exactly are you solving? Are you giving them the rights? Are you empowering them really, or it is ticking the box? I was very shocked. I thought the programming all along at least would have
Local
language. Both sides. Yeah. I mean, you give me a phone and this person has a phone which has several useful apps, yeah? But everything is in English.
Definitely something to consider. Yeah.
But you do mention a very pertinent point, Dan, about leadership and about understanding the bigger scheme of things. I'll give you two classic examples. One about Musanze as a district and Musanze as a town. So because they are a tourist destination, in my opinion, the best service that you get in even a local bar is in Musanze. Because it's been inculcated in them that people go to Musanze for experience, for the service. Of course, historically it only used to be the gorillas. Fast forward, they have, they have the caves that they've improved quite a bit, and they have a few other things, and their entertainment life, and their hotels, and there's quite a bit to do in Musanze. So, but they get it. The vice mayor will go to have a drink with his friends or colleagues in a spot X, and he will be bothered that people are not giving good service right there. Whereas in Kigali, the local leaders are working tirelessly to make sure they close a joint. Right?
It's hyperbole.
Yeah, I mean, it's deliberately. Yeah. So we need, and that's my interpretation of the point you raised around leadership, Diana, that we understand that the country's agenda is at this level, whether it's climate change, as you're saying, or driving MICE tourism, or improving welfare of people, or actually making people have money to spend, and so on and so forth. And for that to happen, the trickle-down effect has to be, you know, really very highly emphasized. Now, I'll take you to something else around malnutrition. The government of Rwanda has invested significantly in irrigation projects. From Chirehe to Kajitumba to Muvumba, wherever you go across this country, there are massive irrigation projects. Some that's supporting on our own, others with the Israelis, with the Indians, and so many partners. And then you go to some of these places, and the Baturages have dug up. So there's what they call drip irrigation. That's yes. The water gets into the soil through a pipe that is in the soil, and these guys dig it up because they want. There's an illusion that if they planted sweet potatoes whose roots go into the soil, that the pipe that is supposed to give them water is in the way of their sweet potatoes, and yet they need to eat those sweet potatoes. The purpose for which these massive irrigation projects have been put there is to, one, provide food, because by I think if I recall well, you need to do about 30% of staple, and then maybe 70% cash crops. But what do cash crops mean to our economy? One of the biggest problems we have is exports. But has that been told to that local leadership? Do they understand the bigger picture of those big irrigation schemes? Why should an irrigation scheme fail in this country, surely speaking? And I think it speaks to your point, Dan, around leadership, that people need to understand the bigger picture, especially local leaders, to understand the bigger picture and what the projects that have been invested in their respective districts or sectors mean to the economy at large. Yeah, I don't get that feeling. Yeah.
For sure. Is there anything you want to add, Brenda?
No. Maybe just to say that on the issue of phones.
The phones have really got you.
Yes. I mean, you can imagine, because this is what is going to happen, yeah? Yeah. Not even 2 years. By the end of this year, most of these people will have sold off the phones to people who can actually use them. You know, and they will go back to their, I don't know what you'd call the other generation of phones.
The katoch.
Yes. Yeah. So you really have to make sure that you catch them when they're still excited about these phones. Otherwise, they'll get the next buyer and they'll sell them off. And then we'll go back to square one and saying, oh, people don't have smartphones. Yeah.
I would like to think that that was an oversight on some phones. I'd like to think most of the phones had programming in Kinyarwanda, surely. Surely. I mean, I don't know the
just
details.
go.
I know you were
my
up country,
sample.
you saw it.
My sample.
Yeah, it was pure English.
Yeah,
and all
it was
those
English.
Yeah. Smartphones. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Let's go to the next topic. It's a hot topic, and it's to do with entertainment. We're entering the festive season. A lot of people are looking forward to, you know, spending time with loved ones, traveling, and generally having celebrations and days off work and that sort of thing. And, you know, we've had lots of concerts. I think there have been back-to-back concerts for the last 5 weeks. I don't know how people are affording going to all these. I know I wouldn't. So what I want us to talk about is the Koffi Olomide concert. You know, it's the hot topic that's been there for the last couple of weeks. It happened last Saturday on the 4th of December. A lot of activists called for it to be cancelled because The artist himself was convicted for rape, amongst other, gender-based violent crimes. And he was in Rwanda performing. Rwanda considers itself a country that has absolutely no tolerance for gender-based violence. And here we were, promoting and celebrating Koffi Olomide. And, activists called for the cancellation of this show. I know his show that's taking place this Saturday in Kenya was cancelled. My question to you, Charles and Berna, I know there's going to be debate on this one, is hosting Koffi Olomide as a country that has a stance on zero tolerance for GBV issues, and then, in light of someone like Koffi Olomide coming to Rwanda is a big deal, and they're looking at business opportunities for promoters and the entire ecosystem around the concert, of that magnitude. What is your take on this? What can have been done better, especially when we're looking to future events like this? I don't know where I should begin.
Start with Bana.
Charles, I think let's kick off with you, Charlie.
To be honest, I have mixed feelings. I didn't understand why people are calling for Koffi's show to be cancelled. For two reasons.
There's no mixed feeling about that. Yeah. You've just made your position clear.
Yeah, I know I have mixed feelings because as a father of 4 daughters, I would be extremely bothered. And I've said this on the show a zillion times about my very emotional attachment.
That's exactly the problem, yes, but I'll come to that.
Yeah. But Koffi is a very big brand. In any case, we should be using Koffi to promote our agenda, as opposed to looking at fighting Koffi. And that was really my biggest problem. It's like, we have Koffi, yes. But is Koffi an abuser? Yes. Is it documented? Does it go into court? Has he done the most terrible acts to women? Yes, that's not in doubt. But then, at the same time, I mean, in Rwanda, when it comes to playing a very, very strong political card to our benefit, we are extremely good at that. And I believe, my personal opinion, that's probably why the government did not come out to pronounce itself. Because I think we lost an opportunity to actually get Koffi and make him an ambassador against gender-based violence and make him pronounce himself on certain things and what have you, especially against women. So we missed a huge opportunity to make Koffi an ambassador against gender-based violence. That should have been the approach, in my opinion, from the onset. But from an entertainment perspective, I'll tell you one thing. Irrespective of the artist that you look at, because the Rwandan market is very small, these artists are almost doing us a favor by coming to perform here, especially the big brands. That's why of late, even though Diana, you're saying that we're having big names, I mean, concert after concerts, look at the brand of artists that we are bringing. We are bringing small-time players because we are a small market. It makes no economic sense for somebody of Koffi's caliber to come and perform in Rwanda in December. That's why we'll have the Rick Hassanis, Omalays, and other small players. That last December, I think we had Awilo Longomba that nobody would even pay 10,000, 15,000 francs to go and watch. So where am I going with this? That whenever you have an opportunity of a big name, cash in on it.
And you're looking at this from a business perspective.
Yes.
I have a feeling people are going to crucify you for your comments.
And I'm ready for that.
On our social media. Berna, what is your take? But I hear.
Yeah, but you just picked one point. I said 2 points.
No.
We should have used him.
Yes.
And we lost that opportunity.
That opportunity.
Yeah.
No, I was saying that because I know some people will just pick up on one thing and you know how these things are. But do you think we could have used him as a GBV ambassador?
Oh God,
How?
you know,
I'm trying to see the logic, because like he's repented for his ways, and then now we try and strategically say, you know, use this platform to say, yes, I did this, I feel bad, I'm urging all men to be cognizant of the fact that it is wrong, I therefore encourage my brothers, that sort of thing. You think that could have worked?
Major General Gwarakabije was fighting this government, and he was an, I think, probably intelligence chief or deputy army chief.
can you please stop him?
Yes, yes.
Please stop him, please. Please stop
And we
him.
brought him.
Please stop him.
This government brought him
From, can you just
from the DRC forests, where he was fighting us,
Yes.
recruited him into the government, took him through a whole reconciliation process.
And now he's the...
He's
He
taking
was
the
even a government leader. He headed our prison services, and so on and so forth.
So it can be done.
It can be done. We just missed that opportunity. Yes.
Bernard, okay, calm down. Yes, over to you. Charles, yes.
I mean, I'm shocked beyond words. I can't believe. Okay, first of all, before I forget, Rwanda is not a small market.
It's very small.
It's not a small market, and I'll qualify what I'm saying.
Yes.
Yeah? If we have a venue that can accommodate thousands, and we have an open airport, why can't people fly in and come to the show? Why do we imagine that whoever comes to Rwanda, whoever goes to the show must be Rwandan?
No,
People can come. So,
Okay, can
so,
I
so it's
respond
not.
to that? Yes.
No. So it's not a small market.
It is very
per se.
small.
No,
Please
it
remember we're in
depends on
COVID
how.
times.
No.
Yes.
It depends on how you package it.
Okay,
And
you
it's the
just
problem
move
of
to your next point.
It's the problem of the promoters of the show. Two, there are no two ways around GBV. Let's be straight. Yeah, there are no two ways. Either we are fighting it, or we are helping enablers. You know, we are enablers. There's no way around it. This time round with coffee, and I thank you for saying it, the politics won, which is okay. Yeah, but let's not try to paint it any other way. Yeah, we can understand, we are keen on you know, it is in national interest to have a relationship with DRC, and we'll do whatever it takes to have that relationship. That's fine, yeah? But let's not try to justify it by saying, you know, there are people who have done graveyard things, and we have rehabilitated them, so we should even try to... No way. I mean, the man himself is not even apologetic about it. Yeah? He's not. Why? We lost the opportunity. That's number one. Number two, you either mean what you say when it comes to fighting GBV, or you don't. We missed the opportunity. There's no doubt about that. And it doesn't make sense.
Can you clarify what you
it doesn't
mean
make
by
sense.
missed opportunity? It
doesn't make sense to try to you know, justify it by saying, you see this. No way.
Bernard, can you just clarify, missed which opportunity?
I mean,
what are you saying the same thing with Charles? I didn't.
No, I don't agree with him at all. Okay. To say, bring this man here, try to rehabilitate him, make him a GB.
Use him to fight your wars.
No. First of all,
yes.
Let's even remember that Kofi, if you look at the demographics of Rwanda, even around the world, most young people don't actually relate to Kofi. The older generation which relates to Kofi will soon be out of the way.
That is not true.
For me, the opportunity is with young people.
Yes.
Yes, and the young people in this country are standing up against GBV. We should be on their side.
So we lost an opportunity.
Yes,
to make a statement.
we did, but we can understand, yeah? We can understand why. In national interest, we are trying to do everything we can to support the DRC relationship. It's in black and white, which is fine, yeah? But let's not try to justify it and say, it's okay, he's... No way.
Moving forward.
So moving forward, yeah? For me, I feel that when it comes to GBV, we just have to take a position. If you have that record, it is there, and you face the consequences for the rest of your life. It is the only way that we'll eventually get rid of the 16 days of activism. These 16 days of activism have been around for a very long time. And instead what we see is that people just use it as a fundraising opportunity. And we know as women that many organizations make a lot of money from coming up with initiatives around supporting women when they don't really mean it. And we see it when instances like this happen, you know, that people overlook and make it a women's issue, an activist issue. No, we are just saying this is a human right. Yeah? And until we are deliberate and say, we mean it. Do not rape, do not defile our girls, do not beat them. If you attempt to rape, to defile, the consequences are for the rest of your life. Because think about it. When this teenage girl is pregnant, her life is completely destroyed. A woman who's been raped, her life completely for the rest of her life. Yeah? So we cannot try to make it like it is a simple problem or let's try to live with it. Then we'll continue to have the 16 days of activism.
And
the reason we have them,
stop having these
yes, we want to stop and say, by the way, we have made so much progress that we no longer need 16 days of activism. But look at the rates, you know, teenage pregnancies, defilement. The numbers are going up.
Charles, I'd like to give,
you know,
absolutely, Bernard. I totally hear you. I hear you.
Yeah, I don't. It's not very often that I agree with Bernard, but on that last point, I think Kofi almost made you miss making that point. Yeah, because that is really a very strongly well put point. The fact that the NGO world will be carried away by fundraising for their own activities and not concentrate on the actual act. We had a show here about naming and shaming gender-based violence perpetrators.
The sex offender registry.
Offenders registry.
Yes.
Was it a step in the right direction? Definitely yes. Was it enough? Definitely not. Can more be done to make sure that both men and women are aware? Definitely yes. So without really laboring on that point too much, I think, and especially government, because especially in Rwanda, we are one of those countries where government speaks and everybody listens. To your point around Kofi and Kenya, and elsewhere, activists can go to court and get an injunction, and a show will not go on, or somebody will even be banned from coming into the country. That's a little bit difficult here. Here, for every stern decision to be taken, it has to be government sanctioned.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and I think that is one thing that really needs to be that really needs to happen is in regards to really walking the talk and not making money from making noise about GBV.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've come to the end of the show, and you know, I would like us to just you know, keep the conversation going using #TheSquareRW. I'm told there's a Champions League happening again tonight. Maybe that's why we're not getting a lot of tweets. But you know, just keep the conversation going using #TheSquareRW. Bernard, it's been a pleasure having you. Very heated exchange and debates. I always appreciate that from you. Charles, also a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you very much for your viewpoints. Much appreciated. To our viewers, thank you for tuning in. Our partners, Uzi Collections and Bourbon Coffee, thank you for supporting The Square. Have a good night. See you all again next week. Thank you.